Turning 68 carries a different kind of weight when your phone doesn't ring. I woke up at 7 a.m., brewed my black coffee, and sat at my wooden kitchen table. The hum of the refrigerator was my only company. I wasn't expecting a surprise party, but I did expect a call, or at least a quick text from my daughter, Kelsey. For the past 3 years, I'd been transferring exactly $1,200 a month into a joint bank account. The original excuse was my son-in-law, Travis's, financial crisis. "We're going to lose the house, Mom," Kelsey had told me, her voice trembling like someone rehearsing a tragedy. As a widow who had diligently saved up from a lifetime of administrative work, I agreed to help. I assumed being the reliable mom sometimes meant just being a silent wallet. At 8:15, I opened my tablet to check the news and, out of habit, scrolled through social media. The very first post on my feed stopped me dead in my tracks. It was a picture of Kelsey and Travis at the airport, hugging Travis's mom, Barbara. They were all wearing cheap Hawaiian leis and massive grins. The caption underneath was crystal clear: "Surprise trip to Hawaii for my mother-in-law, the only one who has ever made us proud." I read that sentence twice. My coffee went cold in its mug. I didn't feel that familiar lump in my throat that usually comes with family letdowns. Instead, I felt an overwhelming, icy, and precise clarity. I logged into my banking app and checked the joint account I'd been feeding every single month. The balance was $43,200. They hadn't been paying off any past due mortgage. They'd been stockpiling my money. I smiled. It was a brief, humorless smile. I selected the full amount. Destination, my personal savings account. Memo, funds returned. I hit confirm. The screen refreshed to show a big, fat 0. I set my phone face down on the table, picked up my mug, and walked over to the sink. The day was just getting started. With the money safely back in my account, I didn't just sit around waiting for the fallout. I slipped on some comfortable shoes, grabbed my purse, and walked the 4 blocks to the neighborhood hardware store. The morning sun warmed the sidewalks, and I breathed in with a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. "Morning, Bill. I need the absolute best deadbolt you've got," I told the guy behind the counter. Kelsey had a spare key to my house. She treated my place like an extension of her own, sometimes dropping off boxes of clothes that wouldn't fit in her closets, sometimes letting herself in to raid my fridge without asking when I wasn't home. That key represented unlimited access, and that access had just expired. I walked back home and, armed with a screwdriver and the patience of a woman fixing her own life, swapped out the lock in 15 minutes. I tested the new key. The heavy metallic click was deeply satisfying. Just as I was putting the tools away, my phone started buzzing on the dining table. The screen lit up with an old, smiling photo of Kelsey. I let it ring. I wasn't in a rush. I started making myself some lunch, chopping vegetables with slow, deliberate motions. It rang a second time, then a third, carrying that specific urgency of someone who has lost control of a situation and needs to scream to get it back. I dried my hands on a dish towel, swiped to answer, and brought the phone to my ear without saying a word. "Mom, what did you do to the account?" Kelsey's voice was shrill, teetering on the edge of hysterics. "Travis's card just got declined at the airline check-in. I looked out the window at my little garden. I stopped being proud." "Kelsey," I replied. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. I didn't hang up right away. I let the weight of my words settle. I heard some frantic whispering, then Travis snatching the phone from Kelsey. "Diane, listen to me," he started, using that condescending tone he always reserved for explaining obvious things to me. This is a bank error. We need you to transfer the money back right now. Our flight board's in 2 hours. The money is in my personal account. Travis, our mortgage arrangement officially ended today. Have a nice trip. This time, I did hang up. I even powered down my phone for a bit. I knew the physical confrontation was coming next. I made a salad, ate in perfect silence, and then started gathering all the junk Kelsey had hoarded in my guest room over the years. Fancy shoeboxes, designer shopping bags, a high-end espresso machine that didn't fit her kitchen aesthetic, all bought with the money they supposedly lacked to make ends meet. I stacked everything neatly on the back porch, right under the awning. An hour later, the sound of tires screeching to a halt in my driveway broke the afternoon quiet. Hurried footsteps pounded up the walkway. I heard the familiar sound of a key sliding into the lock, followed by frustrated jiggling. "Mom, open the door," Kelsey yelled, pounding her palm against the wood. I walked over, but didn't turn the knob. Instead, I slid open the small, frosted glass window next to the door, keeping a physical barrier between us. "The lock is new," I said, keeping my voice totally neutral. Kelsey's face was flush red, her makeup smudging from the sweat. Behind her, Travis was glancing nervously toward the street, clearly paranoid the neighbors were watching. "You're ruining our vacation," Kelsey snapped, gripping the window frame. "Why would you do this today? Do you even know what day it is?" "Kelsey," I asked. She blinked, totally thrown off. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I held her gaze. In my daughter's eyes, there was only sheer financial panic, not a single spark of realization. Travis stepped up, trying to throw his weight around. "This is incredibly cruel. Diane, Barbara is crying in the car. We promised her this trip for her retirement. Then you should have paid for it with your own paychecks." "Travis," I replied, never raising my voice. "The money I took back adds up to exactly the 3 years of transfers I sent you to save a house that, clearly, was never in foreclosure. That money was ours." Kelsey burst out, totally losing it. "You gave it to us. I gave it to you for a crisis that didn't exist. And today, for my 68th birthday, I decided to treat myself. Your stuff is out on the back porch. Take it today, or it's going to Goodwill tomorrow." I slid the little window shut and locked it. I walked back toward the kitchen, tuning out the sporadic pounding on the door that eventually faded. A few minutes later, I heard the dragging of boxes off the porch, and finally, the engine starting and fading down the street. I turned my phone back on. There was a text from Nathan, my oldest son. He lived a couple of states over, married with 2 kids. We had a good relationship, but it was distant. Kelsey had always made sure she was the gatekeeper of family gossip. "Mom, happy birthday. I'll call you tonight. Is something going on with Kelsey? She just sent me a hysterical voice memo saying you lost your mind and put her out on the street." I typed back slowly. I refused to play the victim game. "Thanks for remembering. Sweetheart, everything is fine here. I just made a bank withdrawal. That's all. Talk tonight." I poured myself a glass of ice water. I knew the storm was far from over, but my house felt more like mine than it had in a long time. At 8 p.m., Nathan's FaceTime call lit up my iPad. I answered from the couch, the warm glow of my reading lamp highlighting my calm face. "Mom, you look good," Nathan said, though his brow was furrowed. "Kelsey called me 3 more times. She claims you stole her life savings and ruined Barbara's trip." I flipped the camera to point at my coffee table. I had printed out 3 years' worth of bank statements and lined them up perfectly next to screenshots of Kelsey's frantic texts, begging for mortgage money. Right in the center sat a printed screenshot of her Instagram post about the Hawaii trip. Nathan, look at these numbers, I said, bringing the camera closer. He squinted at his screen. Several heavy seconds ticked by as my son's brain did the math and processed the betrayal. That's $1,200 a month, Nathan muttered. Mom, she told me 2 years ago that you flat out refused to help them. She said your pension wasn't enough and she was paying your electric bill. I didn't sigh. I didn't complain. I just gave a small nod. I pay my own electric bill, Nathan. Always have. Nathan rubbed his face with both hands. His expression shifted from confusion to a cold, hard anger. I've been paying Travis's car note since January. They swore to me they were about to file for bankruptcy because they were helping Barbara with medical bills. My heart sank for Nathan. The son Kelsey had manipulated into funding a lifestyle their own salaries couldn't support. Travis's car is a 2023 model. Nathan, I pointed out. I'm canceling that auto pay right now, Nathan said, his jaw clenched tight. Mom, I'm so sorry I didn't ask more questions. I should have asked questions too, honey, but we're cleaning house now. When we hung up, I knew Kelsey's house of cards had just lost its final pillar. 2 days later, the doorbell rang right at noon. I peeked out the window and didn't see my daughter. I saw Barbara. She was wearing an immaculate linen pantsuit, standing stiff as a board. I opened the door but kept the chain lock on. Diane, it's such a shame we have to meet like this. Barbara started, rehearsing a look of deep disappointment. I'm here to talk. Woman to woman, what you did to the kids is unacceptable. I unhooked the chain and swung the door open, gesturing politely for her to come inside. I wasn't afraid of a confrontation. Come on in, Barbara. I was just making tea. Barbara sat down on my living room sofa, crossing her legs and looking around as if she were appraising my furniture. Kelsey is absolutely devastated, Barbara continued, while I poured 2 cups at the kitchen island. Your daughter bends over backward to please you, and you choose a moment of family celebration to pull the rug out from under them. It's incredibly selfish. I just don't understand it. I set her teacup down in front of her. I sat opposite her, back straight, hands resting quietly on my knees. Barbara, the account I withdrew the money from was a joint account in my name and Kelsey's. It was my money. $43,200 that I sent them under the lie that they were about to be foreclosed on. Barbara paled slightly, but she quickly doubled down on her defense. They manage their finances however they see fit. If you had the extra cash to give, you shouldn't have attached strings to it. You're her mother. It's your job to support her. She is a wonderful wife to my son. Wonderful wife, too. And that's why you're so proud of her. I took a sip of my tea. I get it. But if you're so proud of the lifestyle they're living, I highly suggest you be the one to finance it from now on. My shift as their personal ATM ended on my birthday. Barbara left her tea untouched, stood up in a huff, and marched straight out the door. I woke up the next day, completely energized. There was one room in my house that had been stuck in limbo for years, Kelsey's old bedroom. Even though she'd been married for nearly a decade, she still called it her room and used it as a permanent storage unit. Now that her boxes were gone, the room felt huge, but the dusty pink walls were suffocating. I drove down to the hardware store, picked out a bright, airy white, and a soft sage green for an accent wall. I was going to turn it into a reading and sewing room. By mid-afternoon, I was rolling fresh white paint over the old pink when I heard the front gate squeak open. Nobody rang the bell. A few seconds later, Kelsey's face appeared at the front window, peering in. When I didn't come out, she finally knocked. I rested the roller in the tray, wiped my hands on a rag, and opened the door. Kelsey looked exhausted. The fake airport glow was entirely gone. Mom, Nathan cut off our car payments, she said, skipping any greeting and staring at her shoes. Travis is losing his mind. He says you turned my brother against me. Nathan looked at some bank statements and made a decision about his own money, just like I did. I replied from the doorway. I didn't invite her in. Kelsey looked up and finally noticed my paint-splattered clothes. The smell of fresh primer was wafting out the door. She craned her neck to look past me. Are you painting? Did you paint my room? Her voice cracked. And this time, it wasn't rehearsed. It was a genuine sense of loss. I'm painting my new study, Kelsey. She took a step back, the finality of the situation finally crashing down on her. This wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't a play to get an apology. It was a permanent eviction from her safety net. You can't do this to me. Mom, Kelsey mumbled, tears pooling in her eyes, though lacking her usual dramatic flair. We are drowning. Travis put the Hawaii tickets on his credit cards thinking we had your account as a backup. If we don't go, we lose half the money. And if we do, we can't afford to eat while we're there. I just looked at her. She was my daughter, and I didn't wish her harm. But I was never going to let my empathy be weaponized against me again. Cancel the trip. Kelsey, recoup what you can. If you just give me half back, just half, I can fix this. She begged. I swear to God, I'll start paying you back next month. The whole mortgage thing was just a misunderstanding. Travis got the numbers mixed up. I let out a soft breath. Show me the receipt from the travel agency, I said calmly. She blinked, her tears stalling. What? The receipt. I want to see the exact date you booked the tickets to Hawaii. Kelsey swallowed hard and looked away. Her knuckles went white, gripping her purse strap. I don't have it on me. It's in Travis's email. You bought them in November, didn't you? I wasn't asking. Right around the time you called me sobbing because your roof was supposedly caving in, and you needed an extra $2,000 from my Christmas savings. She didn't say a word. The silence on the porch was deafening, broken only by a bird chirping in the distance. The manipulation was dragging right out into the daylight, and there was nowhere left for her to hide. Go home, Kelsey. Sort out your finances with your husband. And don't ever ask me for money again. I closed the door slowly, making sure the deadbolt clicked securely into place. I went back to the bedroom, picked up my roller, and kept covering the past with perfect, flawless white. It was Friday, the exact day that, according to the Instagram post, which had quietly been deleted, Kelsey, Travis, and Barbara were supposed to be boarding a plane to paradise. I woke up at my usual time. The smell of fresh paint in the house gave it a feeling of new beginnings, of something clean and wholly mine. I made my breakfast and went out back to water my plants. The weather was beautiful, crisp and clear. Around 11, my phone vibrated in my apron pocket. It was a text from Kelsey. We had to cancel. Travis is sleeping on the couch. His mom isn't speaking to me. Hope you're happy. I stared at the words on the screen. A week ago, a text like that would have sent me into a guilt spiral. I would have made excuses for them and tried to fix the damage by taking on responsibility that wasn't mine. Today, I just saw it for what it was, a desperate attempt to dump the consequences of her own actions onto somebody else. I didn't text back. I locked the screen and slipped the phone away. I went inside, pulled a small weekend bag from my closet, and packed some comfortable clothes, a couple of books, and my toiletries. I had booked a room the night before at a little bed and breakfast in the Blue Ridge Mountains, about 3 hours away, a quiet spot surrounded by pine trees and cobblestone streets. I was paying for it with a tiny fraction of the money I had rescued from my own account. I called an Uber while I waited in the living room. I looked around. The house was quiet, but it wasn't a heavy or lonely quiet anymore. It was the peaceful silence of a safe space. lived in by someone who had finally reclaimed her own ground. I grabbed my keys, locked the front door with my brand new deadbolt, and got into the car. 3 months later, the entire dynamic had changed for good. I was sitting in my new study, reading by the window. The sage green wall looked beautiful against the late afternoon light. My bank account was intact, quietly earning interest instead of bleeding out every month. Nathan comes down to visit with the grandkids every other weekend now. He's gotten his own finances back on track since he stopped funding his sister's fake luxury lifestyle. Kelsey keeps her distance. She doesn't have a key anymore, and she knows that showing up unannounced just means staring at a closed door. Her texts are rare and extremely cautious. They ended up having to sell Travis's shiny new car to cover the credit card debt from the botched vacation. Kelsey actually went back to working full-time at an office to pay her own mortgage. On a Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Kelsey. "Hi, Mom?" Her voice was subdued, totally stripped of the dramatics and entitlement of the past. "Hi, Kelsey. How are you?" "Tired. Just got off work late. I just wanted to see how you were doing and ask if, maybe, I could come over for coffee this Sunday. I'll bring some pastries." I closed my book, carefully marking the page. There were no hidden requests in her voice, no manufactured emergencies. "Sunday afternoon works for me," I said, my tone easy. "Let's say 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock. Thanks." "Mom?" I hung up. I wasn't holding on to any resentment, but I wasn't naive anymore, either. We were rebuilding our relationship on actual reality, not on bank transfers and one-sided sacrifices. I smiled, took a sip of my warm tea, and went back to my book. My life belonged to me again. Sometimes, we confuse being loved with being useful. We convince ourselves that if we stop solving everyone's problems, handing out cash, or keeping our mouths shut when we're mistreated, we'll lose our value or our place in the family. But genuine love doesn't demand that you empty your own cup to fund someone else's comfort or lies. Setting firm boundaries isn't an act of revenge, and it isn't a tantrum. It's simply handing back the responsibility for people's lives and choices to where it belongs with them. You can't teach an adult how to grow up if they're used to being constantly rescued, but you absolutely have the right to drop that weight so you can finally breathe. At the end of the day, protecting your own peace doesn't make you the villain of the story. It makes you the author of your own happiness. And that happiness usually begins with the courage to say no more and lock the door behind you.